Welcome to NephTalk and happy National Social Work Month.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And this year's theme is social workers are essential. I imagine you would agree with that.
I very much agree with that. I think this is a fabulous theme following a very trying year where our essential work was prominent and was big focus for my work.
It's really important that we dive right into this because in terms of your patients, I imagine COVID is ticking constantly in the background. What are the typical concerns of dialysis patients?
The biggest concerns for our patients are around quality of life, how to live a good quality life with dialysis. That can mean focusing on income, focusing on insurance matters, focusing on how to get to and from your dialysis treatments, and then focusing on how to live outside of dialysis. Then when you add COVID on top of all of that, which has added strains for everyone, not just your dialysis patient, but everybody. Some people have been out of work, lost work. Income then suffers. That is where my social work team have spent their time this past year, is helping our patients ensure that they have food to eat, transportation to dialysis, and some quality of life outside of our treatments so that coming to treatment, persevering is all worth it.
You told me recently that most dialysis patients do not work, that their income is typically derived from Social Security or disability, and that most of their coverage comes from Medicaid or Medicare. That must be very difficult for people who've enjoyed a productive life, who've worked very hard, and suddenly everything turns upside down.
Dialysis patients frequently are not a working population. The demands of being on dialysis alone, whether you're on the in-center showing up 3 to 4 times a week for 3 to 4 or more hours, and then the after effects of a treatment, feeling tired or fatigued or worn out, makes it really hard to hold a regular job.
Those same patients who would typically receive a ride to the dialysis clinic 3 days a week, or they would take the bus, now are very challenged to get to their dialysis appointment. That's an enormous change.
Yes, transportation to dialysis is always a struggle and always a very important part of treatment. The immediate effect of a COVID-19 diagnosis is almost an absence of available options for transportation.
Also, as a social worker, I'm sure you're painfully aware that for many of your patients, their social life revolved around dialysis sessions. Their friends, family members were essentially other patients. In fact, after a dialysis session, they would reward themselves by going out for lunch, to get a snack. Well, those days are over.
Those who come to treatment on the in-center absolutely found connection with other patients, and that was part of their social life. Now, with social distancing, wearing masks and being apart, even in the waiting room, has left many patients without that connection that they used to seek.
As the director of social work for Satellite Healthcare, supervising 110 or more social workers, what kind of guidance have they been seeking since you and your colleagues, all part of the interdisciplinary team, essentially wrote the playbook for how to deal with COVID-19 and the needs of dialysis patients?
So before COVID, social workers would ask me, how can we do what we do better or more efficiently? That would be where we would spend our time. Our processes, developing our workflows to be more efficient, to be more appropriate, to be more effective. During COVID, social workers reached out and said, how can I just do what I need to do safely with the right personal protective equipment, PPE, with the right amount of distancing, but also with the right amount of human touch to really support our patients through this challenging time. Questions came around, how do we do admission paperwork? How do we welcome a new patient into our center, into being on dialysis? How do we reach our patients who are in the home? How do we stay connected to them? How do we bring our care to patients without increasing the risk of COVID-19 transmission. And those really became the focus of our questions, of our answers.
And to still keep that experience very, very personal, very intimate. You mentioned to me that a social worker said to you, I'm learning to smile with my eyes. I want to make sure people can see that I smile with my eyes. But how do you do that? It's important for people to understand that you're empathetic and compassionate. How can you smile with your eyes these days and still maintain a high level of communication?
Emotions and connecting with somebody is as much about what you say as how you nonverbally communicate, how your body and your face connects or transmit your feelings to someone else. That is where this social worker said to me, with my mask on, I'm trying to connect with my patients. I'm trying to show them that I'm smiling with just my eyes. That really was a beautiful way to see how these social workers in the field were really working hard to connect with patients with much less physical connection and visible connection. And so spending the time working through our tone, even speaking through a mask, is altering the way our voice sounds. But smiling by really connecting through visual contact, through eyes, became one of the main ways we could connect with our patients.
As a social worker, you enjoy, as do all the members of the interdisciplinary team, a very, very high level of trust, and I would assume affection too, from the people you work with, frequently for many years. Have you felt that sense of trust has been eroded during the era of COVID?
I don't. Trust has been fortified in other ways. I think trust in showing up in tough times may not be sitting and holding someone's hand, but making extra phone calls or ensuring that the communication is clear, even through a mask or over the phone or with some physical distancing, standing 6 feet apart from one another. I think trust has been strengthened through actions and through just showing up to do the work, even through the challenges.
I would imagine one of your main areas of concern is how relationships change for patients who are now on dialysis. I'm sure you and your fellow social workers also anticipate this and seek to intervene, mediate, or perhaps even referee at times the relationship that people have with their spouse, their partners, their friends. How can you anticipate those changes and preemptively bring it up in a conversation?
When a person starts on dialysis, lots of things change. Schedule, for one, energy, lots of emotions come up about feeling dependent on a treatment to remain alive. Those who have intimate relationships certainly can experience some major changes. One of the things social workers do, big part of what we do, is focusing on quality of life with our patients. And intimacy with a partner is a big part of quality of life. We do have formal surveys that we do with patients that can get to these questions and these issues, but we also do our informal rapport building that help us connect with a patient and allow them the familiar, comfortable setting to bring up sensitive, intimate, personal topics such as partner intimacy with us. Here at Satellite, we're always working to make life better for those living with kidney disease.
We've discussed the idea of mobility, which frequently is dependent on the patient's ability to move and their energy levels. A researcher once told me that typically as many as 50% of dialysis patients really can't walk more than a block, which was very, very startling for me to hear.
Mobility is a struggle for many dialysis patients. One of the areas of focus that social work and nutrition and nursing spend their time working with patients is encouraging self-efficacy, doing for yourself what you can do. The more someone does, the more they feel they can do. And it's a cycle, a perpetuating cycle of of improvement. And the opposite can be true. The less someone feels they can accomplish, the less they may end up doing. And that cycle as well can be very difficult to break.
This must be very frustrating for patients in the sense that they are patiently waiting as a candidate for a transplant. How do you keep people on a positive emotional path during the wait for a transplant? And of course, they have to be healthy to qualify. They know that, and so do you.
Yes, the wait for transplant can be very long. Keeping a positive outlook for 5, 7, 8, 10 years is not completely possible. And so it's okay. We allow for bad days. We allow for moments of doubt or of frustration, and that's okay. And that's part of the human experience. But I think keeping a focus on the ultimate goal and being prepared to live the best life you can after a transplant is part of that motivating experience. Transplant is definitely an area that social workers at Satellite spend a lot of time encouraging patient toward, supporting patients in all of the barriers and hurdles that they may encounter, just getting onto that wait list and then remaining on that wait list by staying as healthy as they can. The freedom from dialysis and receiving a transplant is extremely motivating for those who choose that path. And yet transplant is not the right answer for everybody.
It's interesting that you would mention that. I have spoken to many patients who are very, very pleased with their dialysis experience. They have no interest in a transplant. They feel that living with dialysis and aggressively pursuing a high quality of life is just fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you had experiences with patients who feel exactly that way, that this is fine? I can live with dialysis.
Yes. Yes, there are patients that find great comfort in understanding dialysis and recognizing that this is something they can do, that they have been successful with. And the idea of the unknown, be it transplant, can be frightening or scary.
That's exactly what I've heard from patients. This works. Mm-hmm. I have a routine. And this is very true for home dialysis patients. They have it all together. Everyone's in on the program. You're right about the unknown. It can be a little scary.
If there is a bad story to be heard, that may further embed that scary idea of a transplant maybe that didn't last very long, or a surgery that was difficult, and that can compound that fear of transplant or transplant surgery. That's definitely one of the barriers and the hurdles that social workers work on, and that's part of that education and the psychoeducation, is bringing the right information at the right time to help a patient make some important decisions.
You're a social worker. You sound like an interventionist, a mediator, a referee, a best friend, a dedicated listener. So many roles wrapped up in being an effective social worker.
Aside from being essential, which I truly believe, I believe in the world of dialysis, we are patient advocates. That is what we carry around with us, is the knowledge and the intimate information of a patient to be able to advocate on their behalf, even when they're unable to do for themselves.
Have you had a patient lean over the table, social distancing, of course, and say, "Emily, this must be really tough on you, something that you lose a lot of sleep over"? Have you had an experience similar to that?
It's interesting. I think patients appreciate the work that we do. And I've had many a patient say thank you or appreciate the outcome of some big struggle, whether it be gathering and documentation to apply for and be approved for an insurance, or a housing program, or an income assistance. Yes, some of these stories can be really hard. Part of that empathic side that we as social workers have is to be able to understand the story, connect with a patient, and still be able to move forward to support them. I think not getting lost in the tragedy is the only way we can be effective. And so we can carry their stories, but we can carry them forward to support them in a positive or a hopeful outcome.
You used the word essential, which is this year's theme for National Social Work Month. Social workers are essential. Emily, thank you for joining us today on NephTalk.
Thank you for having me. It's been a wonderful experience.
As we celebrate National Social Work Month and National Kidney Month, we want to personally thank our social workers for the care and compassion they show our patients and their families. You are always there. You're great listeners. You provide counsel and make connections to resources and services. Our patients deeply appreciate your unwavering support, as social workers are essential. You help humanize dialysis treatment for patients. You are leaders, advocates, and champions. With great admiration and appreciation for all that you do, happy National Social Work and National Kidney Month too. I'm Christopher Springman, and thank you for listening.